If you really care about your reputation and you really don't want people to find out that you've done some stupid things, then don't do stupid things. It's that simple. I want to have a lot of money, but I want to earn my money. Is it hard to make that money yourself? It's very hard. But guess what? When you do it, you become even stronger. And then new horizons and new doors open up. So what do you want to be? These bosses, they make a ton of money off of me. Hey, I don't care how much money they make off of me. Who am I? I'm building me. Because if I'm going to go be a successful business guy, if I'm going to be a great dad, if I'm going to be a good husband, I need to continue building myself up. And so I'm building myself up, and when I become bigger and stronger and smarter, people want to be friends with you, people want to work for you, people want to offer you jobs, people want you to work for them. It just automatically happens. And if you're going to drown, don't drown in 2 feet of water. Go out to where it's like a mile deep, because chances are you're not going to drown. You're going to survive and you'll be fine, and you're going to face some challenges and you're going to overcome them. I found my purpose in life through the Bible. That's been a life-changing thing for me.
I feel like right now we're living in a very interesting time. Everyone's super overloaded with information. There's abundance of information. With a few keystrokes, people can access how to do this, how to this, how to this, right? But at the same time, with all that, I don't see that people are living much happier lives. And I think the main reason, or one of the big reasons, is because for some reason people don't really put as much effort in finding their purpose in their life. Knowing your success, a little bit about your life, I can confidently say that you have reached a certain level of success at a very young age. Would you say that you found your calling and your purpose? And if so, how was that journey like?
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure and an honor. I think all of us are always in pursuit of our calling. And for me, I would say I have found my calling, yes, but it changes. I call it graduating from when a first grader goes to first grade, they have a calling to finish first grade, get A's in science, math, English, things like that. But then when they graduate that particular grade or class, it's time for them to go on to the second one, and then goals change, priorities change, the environment changes. So in my professional career and personal life with the family and in ministry at church, I would say that I know what my calling is right now, but I also expecting it to kind of change with the seasons of life. It's been a fun journey. We got here to America in '98, and
how old were you?
I was 9 years old.
9 years old. Okay.
And the first thing that we always wanted to do, that I always wanted to do, is fit in. I wanted to be an American because you didn't fit in. I didn't fit in. So there was a season of finding yourself, trusting yourself, loving yourself, appreciating the skills you have, not trying to be someone else. But then as I got older and got into the professional world, working in construction, working with real estate agents, being an inspector, and that changes a little bit. And at that time when you're single, your calling's to find yourself a mate. And in the professional world, you're trying to grow professionally in the business and things like that. But then seasons change, your business grows. So instead of doing more installs of siding or decks or things like that, you're trying to now hire people to do marketing and videos and social media. So I would say it changes, generally speaking, for me. But just to kind of wrap it up, I found my purpose in life through the Bible, and that's been a life-changing thing for me. So
Through the Bible,
yes. Yeah, I could tell more if you like.
Yeah, please.
There was a time in my life where, I'll tell you what happened. But this was maybe 6 years ago. I had kind of a revelation moment where I had one of my termite inspectors who worked for me called me and said, "Hey, Dimitri, I just had a heat stroke on the job." He called emergency, and ambulance came up and picked him up and took him to the hospital. And he says, "I need our workers' compensation insurance information because I got injured on the job." And as an employer, that's always a very stressful phone call you don't want to get. Well, it so happened that shortly, maybe 2 weeks later, my controller, Asia, who works for us, comes and goes, "Hey, Dimitri, I got great news. Bill got assessed at the hospital, and they figured out that it wasn't an injury, it wasn't a heat stroke, it was a heart attack because he was unhealthy, he smoked, he did other things. He's actually had previous heart bypass surgeries in the past, and so he didn't follow the diet and things like that. So he experienced a heart attack. But she brought it up as like, hey, this is good news. Our workers' compensation isn't going to have to pay for this. He's going to go to his health insurance coverage and get that covered." I'm like, well, that's great. That's good news. Bad for Bill, bad news for Bill, good news for the company. Well, 2 weeks later, when we're running payroll for that month, we're going down the list of all the employees and what we're paying them. We get to Bill, and she's like, "Hey, what do you want to do with Bill?" And I says, "Well, I don't know. He hasn't worked for a month, but we didn't fire him. He's not laid off. He didn't quit. He's still on the books. So what do we do in a situation like that? Do we pay him? Well, he didn't earn any money because he didn't produce anything." And at that moment, I had like an idea. I was like, "Hey, let me just call him." So I grabbed my phone. I called Bill, and I said, "Bill, how you doing?" He says, "I'm not doing well. I'm still at the hospital. My heart's not working properly. I've had a bunch of fluid in my legs." And I said, "How you doing financially?" And he says, "I'm not doing good, Dimitri. Because it's now a health condition, he can qualify for disability, but disability doesn't kick in California for 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to fund himself for 90 days. And he says, I live check to check. I've got 2 vehicles on payments. I've got a mortgage payment. If I don't make these payments for 3 months in a row, I'm going to be in foreclosure on all these things." And so in that moment, I was like, "Well, how much do you need, Bill?" And he says, "Well, I need, $3,500 after taxes to kind of cover everything." So I said, "Fine, we'll cover that for you." So I told my controller, Asia, said, "Hey, why don't you write him a check for for $4,500? So after taxes, he gets $3,500. And she did that. And month number 2 came around. Same story. What do we do about Bill? Let me call him. He goes, "Dimitri, I still need money." So we write him a check. Month number 3 comes around. Same story. Call Bill. I'm like, "Bill, this is the last one. You're going to be on your own going forward with disability." I put the phone down, and Asia looks at me. She goes, "Dimitri, what are you doing? Why are you giving this guy money? He knew he had a heart attack. He knew it wasn't a heat stroke. He kind of wanted to set us up and, fake an injury at work to get workers' comp, because workers' comp would pay him his wages and things like that. So this is a person that tried to hurt us, even though he's one of our employees, out of desperation. He's a good dude. He's a good human being. But, in situations like that, you get desperate." And she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And in that moment, I looked at her. She's not a believer. And I said, "You really want to know?" And she's like, "Yeah, I want to know." And in that moment, the Holy Spirit spoke into my heart. And I said, "Well, do you know the story about the Good Samaritan?" And she goes, "No." And so I said, "Do you mind if I tell you?" So it was also an opportunity for me to witness to her. But I wasn't prepared. Like, that story wasn't preloaded in my mind. And so essentially what happened in that story, like, the Holy Spirit gave me that story. And when I spoke it out to her, I was speaking more to myself than I was speaking to her. And it became very clear to me. And in that story, essentially, there was an attorney at law in that time, based on Moses' law. They came to Jesus. We also call them the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm. And
he wanted to, trick Jesus, give him a trick question and catch him. And he said, "Jesus, what's the biggest commandments, And Jesus said, "Love God and love thy neighbor." And he says, "Well, who's my neighbor?" Because that's such a subjective question. Like, who is your neighbor? Who should you be loving? And Jesus says, "I'll tell you a story," and told him the story of the Good Samaritan. There was a guy going to Jericho from Jerusalem. He got robbed, beat up. He's dying. And there was a Levite that came up and passed by and didn't help him. There was also a priest went by and didn't help him. And then there was an enemy, somebody considered an enemy, right? The Samaritans, because Samaritans and Jews did not have good communication. And he saw him, and he picked him up, cleaned him up, took him to a hospital, paid for his healing, for his medical treatments and things like that. And then when Jesus was done telling that story, he looked at this attorney at law and said, who was thy neighbor to the dying man? And so that attorney replied to Jesus and says, well, obviously the guy that gave him the assistance, And the words of Jesus Christ, I'm building up the story to this one moment, right? And Jesus looked at him and said, you go and do the same. And in my mind, when I was telling that short story to Asia, I could almost see Jesus pointing a finger at him and saying, you go and do the same. And when I said that story, I saw that finger pointing at me. And so essentially, it made sense to me. If I call Jesus Christ my Lord and Savior, my Lord meaning he gets to lord over me, then I have to follow his will. And what kind of a servant would I be? Willing servant and calling Jesus my Lord if I didn't actually do what he's pointed a finger at me and said, you go do this. And that's the biggest commandment, love thy neighbor. And that's changed my life, because I started looking through the lens, whether I'm at home, love thy neighbor. Who's the neighbor in my home? Well, it's my wife and my kids. Love on them. When I'm at church, love on these people. When I'm at work, love on my employees. I can love on my clients. And so it changes the purpose. It puts perspective differently. And so we've talked about this in the past at our GRO, organization where both me and you attend, that you can set the money aside in business and not have that be your goal. Your goal is to love people, serve people, and that's the greatest purpose. And then you make money as a result of what you do, but that was never the goal or the purpose. And so that was kind of my revelation moment. Yeah.
So you saw that it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, what you're doing, you can live your purpose in whatever it is that you're doing. Because some people think that, well, finding your purpose means to find a career path or some kind of a goal, something in the future that I will reach, and that's going to be my purpose. You're saying that it's not really has not really as much to do with what you're doing, is how you are treating people.
Yeah, I mean, look for an opportunity to love on people in any part of your life. So when I talk to young people and do seminars and they say, well, how do I find my calling? I don't know, am I called, in church to preach, to sing, to be a consultant, to be part of the worship team, to maybe be, an operator for video or audio. How do I know what my calling is for a career? And so a really good foundational practical way to identify what your calling is, because you have a purpose and then a calling, so you can fulfill your purpose through your calling, is obviously we're born with God-given gifts and talents. We can develop new ones, but, I always tell them, hey, identify what is it that you're better at than everybody else, because you can really capitalize on that, first of all. And then second of all, what is it that you notice that other people don't notice? So in church, it's a really easy example. You'll get different people coming up and going, hey, pastor, how come our landscaping looks like garbage and we have weeds growing in the lawn and nobody else is paying attention? And how come, I'm the only one that always pays attention? Well, it's probably because you have a calling to keep the church in order. That's why somebody else doesn't notice. And usually the audio operator is like, how come we need to upgrade our microphone? Mm-hmm. Why does nobody else care about how the quality of our sound is? And the video guy that's right there always cares about the cameras and the screen and the quality. And somebody else cares about, the quality of the preaching and the sermon. And that's a good way to identify what is your calling. There was a book I read by John MacArthur, a very popular Baptist teacher, preacher, pastor, and he talked about when he opened his first church in Los Angeles. He's like, within, a few months, they had about 200 members 200 people, attendees coming to church service, and he realized that they needed to open up Sunday school. And he shared that he's like, I see the need in a Sunday school, but I don't know who of these people I can, try to recruit to do the specific job. Mm-hmm. Because then you got to interview them, find the qualifications. And what he said he started praying about it, saying, God, you see this more than I do. And he said within a couple of weeks, some lady that was attending church comes up to him and goes, "Pastor, don't you see the need for Sunday school? These kids are sitting in church and you have a lovely sermon. You're really good at your teaching, but, they're not picking up through all that adult talk and conversation. We should break out these kids into a separate room and have a Sunday school class with them, teach them about Jesus and love." And he's like, "I see the fire, the passion in her. She identified, she sees the problem. That's a really good indication that is her calling to do it." Because otherwise you can recruit people. I can interview somebody to do a particular job, but if they're not passionate about it and they're not on fire for it, then I have to create the fire for them.
Yeah.
And I've done this mistake many times when I see somebody that's like, "Man, you've got all this potential. I'm going to try to recruit you, but I can tell that this person isn't really on fire for my idea." So I start lighting them on fire, and I can take them out to coffee and just try to show them the horizons. "Hey, man, if we do this, and here's how we're going to do it, you're going to make more money. You're going to grow. You're going to be blessed." And they're like, "Oh, okay. And, and I almost feel like I'm lighting a fire, like I'm rubbing two rocks to get a spark, and I'm getting a little bit of smoke, and they're finally starting to warm up, and they're like, "Fine, I'll do it." And if I put that person in that role, then they become a really heavy drag. Because as soon as I'm not in the room to fire them up, the fire starts dying out. And then, if you hire 5 of these employees or you recruit 10 of these Sunday school teachers, then you're the one that has to wear that weight of lighting people on fire, and that becomes impossible. So I've changed that from finding people that have potential to finding people that are on fire, and so I think that's a good way to find your calling. If you're on fire for something, you're passionate, whatever it is. Some people could be passionate for kids. Some people are passionate for, elderly care. Some people are passionate about ecology and just having different things. And so whatever it is, your passion, fire in your heart, that's a good way to identify where your calling is.
So when we're looking at young people right now, and specifically those that maybe are still struggling to find their calling, what would you say are some of the things that are holding these people back right now, based on your experience and what you see?
Fear, obviously, you have to be a risk taker. A lot of people don't have the confidence. Reinforcement, it's important to have good mentors in your life. Find somebody that believes in you. I know you've shared that you've had really good mentors that believe in you, that kind of encourage you, inspire you. That's a big one. Don't be afraid, to take the risk. The worst thing that could happen is you just fall down to ground level. I've said this thing to so many people. Look, you're stepping into the ocean and you're, 2 feet in. You're like a little bit over your knees deep. And you're so afraid to drown because of the waves and the wind. And, man, if you're going to drown, don't drown in 2 feet of water. Go out to where it's like a mile deep, and, because chances are you're not going to drown. You're going to survive and you'll be fine, and you're going to face some challenges and you're going to overcome them. But so many people stay in that, they're so afraid to go into the depths of what the potential is. And, many people will drown or fail at their idea or whatever it is, and they never even took the chance to go out and to see what the great potential is. Believe in yourself. I also think that God opens doors and opportunities for us. Sometimes when you're talking about young people and they're stuck, it's worth reviewing, looking past on your past life and seeing, where is it at that I'm failing? Because I strongly believe that God opens doors for us, but before he does, he tests us in our abilities. So if you're working in an environment where maybe you have a lot of annoying people around you, and you have to be forgiving, and you have to be loving, and you have to be merciful, and you have to be kind and gentle to these people. And if you're not doing those things, you're kind of failing the test. God put you in a position, be the best you can at what today is challenging you with, And when you do that, and that becomes part of your nature, God's like, okay, you've passed the exam of first grade. I can now transfer you to second grade. And you'll, be presented with new challenges, and you'll have the ability to maybe, steal something, lie, cheat on your time card. add more hours, whatever it is, fill up your personal car with company gas card. And so many people give in to that temptation. And God's like, okay, until you learn how to be honest, how to have integrity, I can't qualify you and graduate you into third grade because you'll have more responsibilities, more risk at that grade. And so if you're not learning, not overcoming those challenges and becoming a better person and being more faithful, then sometimes God's not opening that next door.
Dima, you're talking about God, but what about the people who say, well, what if they don't believe in God?
Well, do the same thing. Apply the same principles.
So you're saying these principles, they work across?
Of course. Yeah, because other people will notice. I was 16 years old when I was promoted. I went to work for a company at 14 years of age. And at 16 years old, I was promoted to being a lead man in my company. So my boss came to me. I worked for a great foreman, superintendent. He was an awesome guy, taught me how to do a lot of things, but he loved to drink and smoke marijuana. So he got a DUI on the job, got fired. But me and him had a good relationship. So every day when we'd come back to the office, he would boast to the office manager and our general manager about how great I was at work. So when he got fired for a DUI, my boss had faith in me. Well, one of the first reason why he boasted about me all the time, which opened the next door for me, was because I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. His name was Shane. And so I would always tell him, hey, Shane, we'd pull up to a house and it's a 3-story house and somebody's got to go up on the roof. I'd be like, Shane, let me go on the roof.
You just had that desire?
I just want, somebody's got to go under the house. I'm like, let me go under the house.
Why did you want that?
Even though I was a helper, right? I'm an assistant. It's his job to do the work and my job is to hand him the nails and the hand.
Yeah, and most people I know who work at these jobs, they wouldn't just, hey, let me go do the nasty work.
Yeah, well, he's a big guy. He was like 6'5", 300 pounds, And I was young and skinny at that time, and so can't say that now, but
you're still young.
Still young. That's right. And so I had this inner desire to learn, but I also wanted to kind of help. I can tell that it would be very hard for him to go under a house.
So your intention wasn't necessarily, hey, I'm going to do this and maybe I'll get promoted. No. It was just a natural desire in your heart just to do that. Wow.
Yeah. And so he would always be happy with that. I mean, he's like, I've never had a helper this good. So he would come back to the office and be like, this kid, has now learned how to do tile, and he does plumbing, and he does electrical, and now he knows how to do texture. So when he got fired, my boss was like, hey, Shane said you could do all these things. Do you want to run a crew? Do you want to be a foreman? I'm like, I'm 16. You can't even give me a truck. He's like, I'll hire you a driver. So they hired me a driver. His name was Boris, who was also my helper, and started giving me little jobs. I had to learn how to juggle with that, and I got presented with new challenges. And so when I say that I was presented with stealing or adding hours on a time card, our boss would give me a job jacket that would say that here's a job for $10,000. You guys have 50 hours to finish the job. Well, we go out there and knock it out in a day. That's 2 guys, 8 hours each. That's 16 hours. I'd look at Boris and be like, Boris, we can come back here tomorrow. They don't know we're done and just lounge all day, or we could go do some side jobs and be on the clock. Or, I go to Home Depot, buy a bunch of materials for a job. And then the job is over and I have a few sheets of siding left over, box of nails. I go back to Home Depot to return it. And they say, well, do you want to go back on the card or would you like some store credit? And I'm like, well, I know that the job is very profitable. I knocked it out 3 days earlier than they were budgeting for. So I'll take the gift card.
You actually did that, or you could have?
I did it.
Okay.
The gift card, And then I thought I was going to do something nice. So I went to Home Depot, and we were an immigrant family. I want to help my parents. So I used that $150 to buy toilet paper, paper towels, garbage bags, a new mop, whatever. I brought it home, and I'm like, yeah, Mom, I bought some supplies for you. This is nice. But deep down in my heart, my conscience was judging me. And so eventually I was like, man, that's not right. It wasn't mine. I decided to give back the $150 back to the boss, but I didn't know how to do it without, ratting myself out. So on the next job, I bought $150 worth of materials with my personal card. Kind of paid back the company without the company knowing. But that was a mental barrier when we're talking about not faith or God. Just you get over that mental barrier and set a higher standard for yourself. I will not steal that. Whatever's not mine. Now, I want to have a lot of money, but I want to earn my money. So like once I thought that through, something inside of me changed. I changed. Now I'm a different Dimitri. I'm a different Dima, Well, when I changed, people noticed that. My boss noticed that. The guys that worked on my crew noticed that. And so automatically you're almost like preparing yourself for the next opportunity. So when the next opportunity arrived for me, when they needed a termite inspector, I was 18 years old. They were like, hey, do you want to be a termite inspector? I said, yes. And then similar challenges happened with that. And then I became a home inspector. And so you kind of qualify yourself for the next opportunity. But for many of the young people out there that feel stuck, I would strongly recommend look at yourself. Where is it that maybe you're failing? Maybe you need to step up. Set higher standards for yourself, even if no one's catching you stealing. Nobody knows that you're lying. Nobody knows that. And you feel justified. And in your mind, you're like, well, I'm a victim of the situation.
Yeah.
These bosses, they make a ton of money off of me. Hey, I don't care how much money they make off of me. Who am I? I'm building me. Because if I'm going to go be a successful business guy, if I'm going to be a great dad, if I'm going to be a good husband, I need to continue building myself up. And so I'm building myself up. And when I become bigger and stronger and smarter, people want to be friends with you. People want to work for you. People want to offer you jobs. People want you to work for them. It just automatically happens. So maybe you just need to pass that exam.
Yeah. It's interesting because in our society, the opposite kind of behavior is almost like encouraged. Like think about like insurance, right? I hear people get in a car accident and you know what I'm talking about. It's like, hey, actually I did injure myself, I
Yeah.
and or kids being taught in certain schools that say, all this negative stuff about these large corporations, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. So people are growing up and they're thinking, what's $10 here, $10 there? This is nothing for them, right? And it's almost like in their mind justify certain things, not realizing that maybe those are the things that are holding them back.
Of course.
From graduating, like you said, to that next
because when you make yourself a victim, you identify, like, this world is a zoo, man. We've got, predators and prey. So which one are you? And as soon as you're like, oh, well, I'm a victim, you're kind of becoming a little gazelle. And then if you think you're more a victim, maybe you're a bunny. And there's a lot of lions and hyenas and wolves and bears out there. So become a lion, build yourself up. One of the things that I do is I do restoration work. And the statistic out there is that 50%, this is from the Department of Insurance in California, when they do their audits, they find that 50% of their audits, when they do audits, come back with some form of fraud happen. When people, and this happens all the time, you brought up vehicle accidents, somebody gets rear-ended, it's just a bumper, fender bender, and they coming out with holding onto their head, oh my, and then they want to claim $250,000 of quality of life lost stuff. Hey, you might get some money out of that, right? But that money ain't gonna do you no good. It ain't gonna make you happy. It's not helping you fulfill your calling, purpose in life. I would say it's much better that you build yourself up so you become the predator.
Oh yeah,
world. You don't want to die with sharks. Become one.
Yeah. I mean, you can't live off of just milking the system. It's not gonna get people far. That's
because you're robbing yourself of that growth. Is it hard to make that money yourself? It's very hard. But guess what? When you do it, you become even stronger. And then new horizons and new doors open up. So what do you want to be?
That's a really good point. All right. So I know that you are running multiple businesses. You have a big family by most standards. I mean, not for my parents' standards, but for our current time standards. How many kids do you have?
6 children.
6 children. Wow. You are involved in missions. You are involved in church. How do you balance all that?
Well, I also believe that I had God's grace on me early on in my business. When I started my first business, which was Good Life Construction, before I got married, 3 years before I got married. So I had a head start. I could work 18-hour shifts a day, 6 days a week, because Sunday we went to church. And I didn't have a wife that was upset that I wasn't coming home early. So by the time got married, things were moving well forward already. And then we had a great communication with my wife. I said, sweetie, I need a couple more years to really get things going to her, where I can step back from day-to-day operations and spend more time with you. I need your support. So we sat down, we made a plan. I gave her my commitment. I said, sweetie, if you support me and let me get to these areas, then I will commit to you that I will spend more time with the family, and I want to be there for the kids. I want to be there on the weekends. And so she supported me. So that was like the best thing that happened, is we had unity and a plan and a commitment towards each other. So that was a big thing. And then as the business grew, one of the best things that happened is I eventually identified that some of the employees working for me were better at doing their job than I was doing that particular role. And, as a business owner, when you see really good employees in your company, you're afraid to lose them. So a lot of people start doing some kind of fear tactics, telling those people, hey, this is really hard doing your own business, and trying to find a way to keep him, put pressure on them, manipulate him into continue to work for them. Well, I didn't know how to do that. So I sat down with one of my best employees. His name is Mike. And I was like, Mike, you're so good at this job. You're better than me. Honestly, if you wanted to, you could quit, start your own company doing exactly the same thing we do, and you'll be successful. And you probably should do that. I told him. And he looked back at me. He's like, dude, are you firing me? And I'm like, I'm not firing you. I'm telling you that you're really good, and I see that you're really good. And he said, well, I don't want to quit. I want to work for you, And I said, well, why don't we do this, something like where maybe you can run this part of the company for me and I'll profit share with you. And I think that made a big impact, the fact that I was very open. Instead of trying to manipulate him or scare him into leaving, I was just very honest. And so that created an environment of enabling our internal people to grow into leaders and then be rewarded according to the results that they brought in. So when he stepped into my role, I kind of let him run a couple of the different things I was doing in management. It took him about a year and a half to kind of take over all 90% of my responsibilities. And then he became pretty good at them, And so when he did that, I was like, well, I have all this extra time on my hands. I'm going to go start another company. And I did, because more opportunities automatically opened up. So there's always more opportunities out there than you can handle. So I went started another company, bought another company, and did the exact same thing in each one of those companies. At that same time, as my family grew, I had more free time now, more finances, more resources to spend time with home with the kids. Instead of running out of home at 5 a.m, now I'll wake up, help my wife make breakfast, pack up the kids. That's a very stressful time in the morning when kids are going to school. You got to pack them lunch. You got to feed them. You got to double check the homework, make sure everybody's good, double check that they clean their room, because I want them to grow up to be good human beings. So I go double check, hey, Alex, you didn't make your bed or whatever. You can't leave home without your room being neat and clean. Well, that gives me really good time to spend in the morning with the family. Also takes a lot of pressure off my wife, because if I wasn't there, it would have to be her that did all that. And then it gives me time to also minister at church. And so, but eventually what happens is I put all that together. I don't separate my business, professional life, my family life, and my ministry. I pastor at a local Ukrainian church here in Sacramento. I'm also one of 4 people in charge of a missionary base project. We planted about 50 churches now in Mozambique over the last 10 years. doing a lot of humanitarian work out there, also doing a lot of humanitarian work in other countries. I teach at Bible colleges, a lot of youth conferences and things like that. But all those things actually are one life, one calling, one purpose, to love people, love thy neighbor. I get tired, but I get a call from, this upcoming weekend, I'm flying to Everett, Washington to teach at a Bible college. And they want me to teach on a topic called counseling, biblical counseling. And I've taught on this topic before, and I don't want to go. I want to stay home and lounge and, hang out. But there's going to be 50 young people out there, and I can teach them something. I can love on them. I can sow into them, sow the seed, and I get excited and inspired. I have a seed. I have some experience. I have some knowledge. I've read some books. I've studied at some, colleges, and I want to go give this to them so they can take it on and bring fruit for their life and God's kingdom and glory and build their professional worlds. And so it all becomes one. I don't necessarily find a balance, but I try to spend enough time with the family and prioritize things. But even when we're home with the family, we talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
I talk with my kids. They're like, hey, Dad, why don't we buy an RV that's $250,000? And I said, well, because here at the Tupikov family, we serve and we love on people. So right now is not a good time. We can donate this money. We can buy this vehicle for someone else. We have a nanny that works for us. She's been with us for over 10 years. So last year I was like, hey, do you guys want to upgrade our RV, or would you guys rather buy a car for our nanny? They're like, buy a car for the nanny, because she had an old 15-year-old Prius that was falling apart. And so and we talk it through. That's our calling. That's our purpose. That's our mission. So whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in ministry, we're always loving on people, always trying to build other people up, invest and sow into them. And so then I don't, even if I'm spending more time in one place or another, I don't feel like I'm not fulfilling my calling. That is a general calling.
Mm-hmm. So if for you see it this way, where it's all your life and your life consists of all these different areas, you don't separate it. Are there certain principles that you have established in your business or in your personal life that are some of the non-negotiables?
Love. I have a lot of people. I don't know what the percentage is, but most of the people that work for me, which is over 200 people right now, are non-believers.
Most of the people are non-believers.
Yeah, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ask. It'd be kind of illegal. Right? Customers. But I teach a class on love to all of our employees. And I say, look, you got to love. And I bring up chapter 13 of Corinthians. And you've seen this in people's homes. Even if you're not a believer and you're watching this, check out chapter 13 of Corinthians in the Bible. And Apostle Paul talks about love. And he says, love is patient. He gives 13 qualities to love. He says, love is patient. He says, love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love does not seek its own, and so on and so forth. And for me, those are all applicables. And I say, look, if you want to be a carpenter that works for me, that's going to go out and install flooring or whatever, fix a roof for a customer, I need you to love that customer. And when you say how, those are applicables. I said, well, be patient with the customer. You see, some customers are very annoying. Some are very demanding. Some are very stressed, going through a difficult time of their life. And when you're out there, even as a carpenter or an estimator or a project manager, whatever you are doing out there, be patient, be kind. When you're kind towards somebody, even if they don't deserve kindness, that's a way of projecting love. Don't envy anybody. Don't boast about you're a foreman. I've had this happen where I had a sales manager, call me in to say, hey, Dimitri, we had a great month. Attend our sales meeting, and I'll pop in, and there's the whole sales team of 5 sales guys, and the sales manager, pulls up the PowerPoint, and he's like, hey, look at this. He's like, you want to know how much I got you sold this month, boss? I'd be like, how much? And be like, oh, I got you 2 million sold. Hey, this is great, huh? And you can just tell that the 5 salespeople who were the ones who actually signed all those contracts are just sitting there irritated, gnashing their teeth because they're like, dude, you're just a manager. You didn't do any of this work. It would have been much better for him to say, hey, Dimitri, you want to see how great our team did? Give him the credit, right? So that would be his way of loving on his team members, loving on other employees. So that's not a negotiable. Love is not negotiable. And you could say, well, what does love mean? And I use chapter 13 of Corinthians to lay out those principles. Say, if you're not patient, I don't want you working here. If you're not kind, you don't belong to this family. And so on forth down the road, And I've had a lot of people who are atheists, who are of other religions, say, hey, Dimitri, I can't get behind you and Jesus, but I can get behind love.
Wow.
Everybody can get behind love.
What if sometimes people would say, like, you told a story about what happened with your employee with the bill, yeah. If you do this constantly, you're letting people take advantage of you all the time. How do you differentiate between someone's just taking advantage of you?
Yeah. So that's true. And you can't let people take advantage of you because then you're a coward. You have to have courage to sometimes say no. No, you can say no to somebody and love them with a no. So I had a situation where I had two guys, young men that worked for me. They came to me and they said, Dimitri, we want to start a company like yours. And I said, that's great. I'm going to love on you and help you as much as I can. And they said, well, can you help us get a license? So I helped them with the paperwork and they got their license and they came back to me and they said, can you help us open up a corporation? Like, how do we open up a corporation? So I told them how to open up a corporation. They came back and said, well, how do we get jobs? Where do we find jobs? Because just because you're a carpenter doesn't mean that you know how to do marketing, sales, operations, accounting, bookkeeping. To become a businessman, you have to learn everything. And so I was helping them along the way and finally got to the point where they opened up their corporation. They had a license. They went and landed a few jobs. And they made an arrangement with each other that one of them was going to buy a diesel truck and the other one was going to buy a dump trailer. And so they would be partners, but that would be their contribution to the starting of the business. And one of them came to me and said, hey, Dimitri, would you be kind enough to borrow me some money so I can buy a truck? And I borrowed them the money. And the other one came to me and said, would you be kind enough to borrow me money so I can buy a dump trailer? So not only am I teaching them, I'm also giving them finances to start a company, and they want to compete directly against me.
Okay, are you at this point like kind of irritated? Like
I'm not
at all. Okay,
no.
Okay, all right.
Actually, because I've had this happen in the past, but so finally they land a few jobs. They go out there and do them, and they call me up one day and they go, "Hey, Dimitri, these are people that I consider friends because they worked with me. Then now they're kind of on their own, but." I'm just like, there's plenty of work for everybody. I'm going to help you as much as I can. So they come to me and they say, hey, they call me up, go, hey, Dimitri, we got a job tomorrow in San Francisco. We want to beat the traffic. We want to leave at like 4 a.m. But our truck and trailer are full of garbage from today's job. So we have to wait until the dumpster is open so we can drop the garbage. And we're going to hit traffic if we wait that long. Do you mind if we take this garbage to your yard, because I have a dumpster in my yard, and dump our garbage in your dumpster? And that's when I started getting a little annoyed, and I probably should have said no, but I was too cowardly, Paul. Like, I'm a people pleaser, And so I said, whatever, just go ahead and dump it. So they went and dumped that garbage. And then they ended up going more and more times without asking for permission. So now they're like starting to regularly dump garbage into my dumpster. And I hear about this, and so now I have to confront them, but I don't want to have this discomfort and conversation. And eventually, a few weeks later, they land a job with some brick work, but they don't know how to do brick. But they worked for me, and so they know carpenters that work for me that know how to do brick work. So they came around to my office at 7 o'clock in the morning and started recruiting at my doorstep. My employees rolling into the office saying, hey, come work for us. And when I found out, my Mike, the gentleman I talked about before, who's now running Good Life Construction, calls me up and goes, Dimitri, they're putting garbage in they used to work for him. They were on his crew. You let them put garbage in our dumpster. Now they're stealing our employees. you got to have this conversation with them. And I'm like, Mike, let's just maybe leave it alone. And he taught me a really valuable lesson. He said, Dimitri, you're the owner of the company. If we all rely on you to protect us, to set these boundaries, and if you're too cowardly to have these conversations, you see, if they came to your house and took something from your house and you're like, that's okay, that only affects you. But they're coming to our company and they're hurting our company. They're taking employees, they're doing other things. And so when they're doing that, they're not just hurting you, they're hurting the rest of the employees within the company. So you need to learn, if you can't defend us, then we're like, who will? And that pretty much opened up my mind. And I'm like, I don't, as a leader in my role, I don't have the right to not face these difficult conversations. So I called them up because I was still trying to be on good terms with them. Well, now it's about to go downhill, Called them up and said, hey, I need you at my house. And conversation was pretty confrontational. But in that conversation, one of them, once I laid it out and I told them, hey, I borrowed you money and I borrowed you money, and they didn't know that, they didn't tell each other about that.
Oh.
So they're learning about all these things, and I'm like, look, I helped you with X, Y, and Z, and you're kind of screwing me. And one of them looks at me and goes, would you please make me a promise that you're never going to tell this story to anybody? Like, I would be so embarrassed if people found out what we did. And I was this close to making that promise and saying, yeah, I'm going to make you that promise. And then for a second, I was like, no, I'm not going to make you that promise because I didn't make this mess. You see, you made a stinky mess. You crapped all over yourself. And now you're embarrassed that your mess stinks and you don't want people to know. So you want me to promise that I'm going to use my hands to cover up your crap? And I said, that ain't my crap. I'm sorry. If you don't want to be embarrassed, don't ever crap. And that was also a really good educational moment for myself, where I got to realize, almost like in the process, learn that, hey, sometimes bringing them in and having that difficult conversation was also me loving on them and teaching them the whole idea of like, hey, if you really care about your reputation and you really don't want people to find out that you've done some stupid things, then don't do stupid things. It's that simple. And I felt like we left on better terms. Maybe they weren't very, cuddly feeling, but I think we both grew out of that conversation. So if you don't want to be taken advantage of when you're loving on people, saying no, saying the things that are confrontational, things that, same with love, don't put anybody down. Don't speak down to anybody, because people feel when you're putting them down and you're speaking down to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can speak to them directly as an equal, and mention the difficult things, you can still love on somebody, even when you're saying no.
Yeah, well, having these tough conversations is definitely part of leadership. And on the topic of leadership, with over 200 employees, what is your style of leadership?
Love. Kill them with kindness. I spend a lot of time initially when I put somebody into a leadership role. I invest a lot of time in them, trying to pass on the understanding that their job is to also love their people, their employees, because I know that if I love so let me give you an example, because it'll be a good answer. When I bought North American Home Services, a home and a termite inspection company, I actually used to work there as an employee. And then years later, I came back and bought that company. When the previous owner of that company handed it over to me, he stayed on as my business coach to teach me how to run that company for a while. And so one of the first things he did, he said, Dimitri, it's New Year's. We got to send out a yearly goal to the company. He's like, I do that every year. And so he says, here's my goals from last year. Look at them. You're the new owner. You can do whatever you want. But I recommend that everybody knows what our company goals are. And I looked at his goals, and his goal from the previous year was like, our goal here at North American Home Services is for us to do $2 million in revenue with a 15% net profit. And then our goal number two is to raise the bar raise the standard in the industry of the quality of inspections and work that we perform. And goal number 3 was to improve the work environment for our employees. So he's pretty much sending an email to all employees and saying, here's the 3 goals for this year. Make sure you do this. When I looked at these goals, I was like, I don't know that I can get behind these goals because I almost feel embarrassed. Like, it feels embarrassing to me to tell my team that your job is to make me $300,000, because if you do the math, 2 million revenue at 15% net is 300 grand. 300 grand net profit, it would be $300,000 towards the owner of the company. So I'm like telling my employees, your job is to make me money, you know? And then what happens is the second goal, which is a great one, let's raise the standard of how we do work, is never accomplished because goal number 1 is all to make as much money as possible. So no money's ever being invested into better software, into better tools and equipment, into training your teams, hiring better talent, because you're always focused on goal number 1, make more money, make more money, make more money. And then definitely the work environment for the people, it never gets taken care of. So the office where we worked out of was in pretty poor shape. Like, the ceiling tiles all had stains on them because the roof leaked all the time. The air conditioner would not blow cooler than 82 degrees. The floor, it used to be a restaurant. They turned it into an office. So the floor had these old brown tiles, brown walls, no windows. There was like one window with bars over it, you know? And so if you sat in that building for 8 hours, you'd feel depressed. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I took out the money goal and threw it away. And I said, our goal is going to be to improve the work environment for our people. And then I said, our people that are going to be now motivated and inspired by how we love on them are going to go out and love on our customers. So our customers are going to be happy, and our happy customers are going to pay their bills and refer us to more customers. And we will result in a growth of 30% over last year. And what I did is that same weekend, I took my dad and my brother, and I came in and we took all the desks out of the office. We changed out the carpet. We painted the walls. I changed out the stained ceiling tiles. Went to Best Buy, bought a few HEPA filters because that place stank, and put all the desks back. Or called an HVAC contractor, got the HVAC filled up with some Freon. And when the employees came back to work on Monday, they were like, whoa. Now we get to sit in a lighter building with better air conditioning, you know, fresh carpets. It doesn't stink anymore. And so they would smile. And when customers would call, customer can hear a smile on the phone, you know. So performance improved because of the environment I created. And so our sales went up, you know. Our retention of customers went up. When a realtor called us to schedule an inspection, you know, the previous statistics was that only 6 out of 10 realtors that used us for an inspection came back to hire us for a second one. Well, our retention rate went to 90%. So we had to do less marketing because our existing client base was growing and not going somewhere. They weren't leaving us. And so we resulted in 45% growth year over year. And we continue doing the same thing, improving better cars, better tires, better equipment, better computers, investing and loving into our clients, into our employees. And we had a massive growth. We grew from $2 million to $9 million in 5 years in revenue, and our profits went up accordingly with that. And it wasn't because we focused on the profit. So when you're asking me what kind of leader I am, I'm a people pleaser. And I find that when I invest in love into our people, I have a vision, I share that vision, and people buy into that vision, they get on board. That is the best way to lead. I don't know a different way. I've tried to be a different, like I'll read a book, go to a seminar, and try to be a boss or a leader like some, you know, big CEOs out there, and it doesn't work for me. So I figured out how to leverage what skills and talents I have, be vulnerable, be open. You know, I don't hide any secrets. I don't walk around the office like a big boss. I don't wear very fancy clothes. I'm just a simple dude. People know that. People love that. They relate to it. Exactly. But that doesn't mean that that's the best way, right? It's the best way for me.
For you. It works for
me,
you.
right? So when I mentor other people, I say, well, what works for you? I mean, If I could have some big muscles and be fit, I definitely use that, but I don't. So try to use what I got.
What would you say right now is the most challenging part of running your businesses?
I would say the most challenging thing for me right now is watching people slide back a little bit, like when I'm involved. I don't push people, but just by the sheer presence, I inspire them. And then when I unplug and I see them slipping, getting losing the vision. They say vision leaks. You got to remind people of the vision, what direction, what their goals are. Sometimes that's the most difficult when you step back and you're like, I get this knee-jerk react. I want to jump back in and help them, and holding myself back to let the younger leaders grow into. They have to overcome. They have to experience that pain themselves, and you can only coach so much. So the most difficult thing for me, even though I think I'm pretty good at it, is coaching them, teaching them, but also staying out of the way. And when I see them making a mistake or making the wrong decision or not making the right decision, allowing them to go through their own cycle and grow into that is the most difficult thing for me.
Yeah. It's like watching a father watching a son go through something painful, hard, and stepping away, just allowing that to happen, because he understands that if he comes in and helps out, that lesson is going to be repeated.
And maybe even a little worse, because your company is kind of like your baby. So you're watching somebody hurt your baby, and they're also your kind of child. So but it's great.
Yeah. Do you have someone in your company right now that you could say maybe potentially can fulfill that role, like what you have to constantly lift people up and keep them from sliding, like you said?
Yeah, we have a few younger people in the companies that we're building up to step into that role, and they're doing it on a micro level. So we have multiple companies, and each company has their own general manager, their own controller, their own sales manager, their own marketing, their own production, whatever they do. And so each general manager of each company, we're training and coaching into doing that. Some are doing it better than others, thus stepping back and allowing them that. But yes, because I understand that I can only touch so many people. One of the best things that happened in the beginning of us starting the company is when I used to run it out of my house. Every day when I had one employee, I hired one guy to come work for me in construction. He was my helper. He would come into my house, and because of our Ukrainian tradition, and I think not just Ukrainian, I think a lot of people, whether you live in America and you were born here or you came from another country, when somebody shows up at your doorstep, you almost have to invite them into the house. It's very hard to be like, hey, wait on the curb and I'll come out 5 minutes later. So I started inviting my first employee into the house, and then when I had 3, 4, and 5, and when they come into the house, I'd be like, "Do you want a coffee?" So I'm making all my employees a coffee in the morning, And then I got to enjoying cooking them breakfast for the first, I want to say year, maybe year and a half. I cooked breakfast for all my guys every morning. They'd show up, they'd come into my house, they'd sit at my countertop bar, and I would be pancakes, eggs, bacon.
How long ago was that?
2009, 2010.
Wow.
And, but that built this amazing camaraderie. We were friends first and then coworkers second.
And these people are still with you?
99% of them are with me, yeah. So now I'm telling them, hey, look, we have 200 plus employees. I can't cook breakfast for all of them, but I need you as a manager of your team to cook breakfast for your people. And I'm not expecting you to invite them to your house and cook breakfast, but take them out to an IHOP, invest in them, love in them, provide that same culture, and some people have a better skill or God-given talent having that hospitality towards others. Some people are a little harder for them to, be personable and approachable. So we're working on it.
So all of these things that you're talking about, you shared a lot of stories. Is this all the things that you've kind of experienced and learned as you go, or are some of those things you read in books or got some mentorship?
Never had any specific mentorship, but I worked with some awesome people that I think inspired me and gave me good ideas. It just felt right at the moment to do that. And as I said, put the dollars last. It's expensive to feed people, your employees, every morning. Not because eggs are expensive, but because when you compile all their hourly rates and it takes you half an hour or an hour, that's like $200. We haven't left the house yet, and it's already costing me $200 in hourly wages. But you set that aside, because if they're inspired and happy and they're excited about going out and knocking out a deck or a roof or putting in some windows, they're kind of expected to put in 10 sheets of siding a day, but we're in a good mood and we're rock and rolling. Each one can put up 25. So that's not why I do it, but because I do it, they put on 25 sheets of siding.
Yeah.
We're making a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just feels right to do that. I didn't really start reading books, like business coaching books, until maybe like 5 years ago, when I, started reading again. Because when I went to middle school, I used to love reading. I read a book a day.
What kind of books were you reading?
Just whatever, Hardy Boys was one of my favorite series of books, and they're not, they're like 120 pages. It's a perfect hour and a half read, and all kinds of books that I could find in the library in Arcade Middle School. But then when you go to work, you kind of don't have time to read. So now I'm kind of starting to fall in love with reading again.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's your, top 1 or 2 books that you read, last year? Or
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a really good book to read. Jordan Peterson is one of my favorite guys to listen to. The 12 Rules for Life, if you haven't read it, it's a life-changing book. I mean, changed how I raise my kids, how I treat myself, how I view the world. Posture up with your shoulders back and be a lion, like I was talking about earlier. He talks about the psychological side of that and just straight up science data. Because sometimes if something feels right, and then you read like a scientific book and they're like, science has proved that this is right, and so it clicks.
Mm-hmm.
The 1 Minute Manager is a great book. And then if you haven't read John Maxwell, I mean, he's got 70 books, 15 principles of leadership, this and that, whatever. So I've read maybe 4 of his books so far.
He has a talent for writing.
Yeah.
And just writing out certain concepts, so easy to understand.
Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey is a great book.
I started reading a book by Jordan Peterson this year. It's the one that's called We Who Wrestle with God.
The new one. I haven't started.
Bro, it's not easy to read that book. I'm telling you. I don't know how that book that you said, the 12
Rules for Life.
I don't know how he wrote that one and when he wrote, but this one is you really have to go back and just reread certain things. His level of communication, the lexicon, how he chooses words is just.
Well, yeah, because one of his sentences is like an entire chapter of he's able to put so much meaning into a short amount of words. So when you read 4 pages, that's like a month worth of thinking.
Yeah.
No, the 12 Rules for Life is a much easier
read. Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask you: what is exactly that you still want to accomplish? Do you just kind of where you at right now? You're good. You just want to kind of cruise, or is there something else that's out there that's bigger that you're pursuing?
I'd like to get into shape. That's a big goal of mine. It's been a big challenge for me.
Do you have a plan for that? Sorry. Do you have,
I have a plan? Yeah, I'm not following it though. I need somebody to kick my butt. But I don't necessarily have a dream I want to pursue, because, and this is a difficult question to answer, because people ask me, especially our employees and leaders, will ask me, hey, Dimitri, where do you want to go? What are we doing as a company? Where are we headed? We hit these certain thresholds. What's next? And I'm like, I'm kind of good. Let's just stay where we're at. I don't want to grow anymore, because you don't make a lot of money when you grow. All the money spent on growth, So I want to just kind of stick around and just collect. But everybody wants to grow, and we're growth minded. I'm competitive. So when I tell people, I'm like, look, I don't want to give you an unreasonable goal that I think we can hit, because I actually think we can hit these unreasonable goals. But the best prediction of future performance is your past performance. So I tell them, look what happened to us in the last 10 years. And so if I had to predict what's going to happen in the future, we're going to have the same exact, proportionate growth, maybe into different industries, growing what we currently have. So I'm excited to see that happen with reinventing ourselves every year, because when your company grows, when we were like 2 million in 2016, where we were a $2 million company, then I bought another $2 million company, North American Home Services, in 2016, and then we doubled. We went to like 8, and then we went to like 15, 25, 40, 50 million. And so you have to reinvent the structure, because the building becomes bigger. You have to reinvent the foundation, systems, processes, leadership. And so is it my dream? I wouldn't say it's my dream. Are we headed in that direction, and am I excited for it? Yes, I am. But priorities in life, I have 6 children, and those are my biggest priorities. I want to raise them to be good, kind, productive human beings that are loving and caring for the people around them. So I'm excited to see that as well. That's kind of the dream. Loving my wife.
Yeah. If you were to give advice to someone who is either thinking about starting a business or is in the process of building a business, what would some of the things be? Maybe if you go back to where you were at the beginning stages, what were some of the things that you think a lot of people miss or don't realize, and only in years you go back and you say, wow, like I wish I knew this when I was at this stage?
Mm-hmm. Success, when we think of success, different people that think different things. When you build a company, is having a good reputation, is that a success or no? That's, I think that would be a success. Making a lot of money, is that success? Yes. Having strong employees, a strong company, no debt, things like that is a success. But success is not overnight. That's another biblical, allegory or principle. So a lot of people want to harvest before the fruit is even ripe yet. It hasn't ripened yet. It's not ready to be harvested, and people want to harvest it. So business is a long term. From what I see coaching and counseling other business people, about an 8-year process before you really start taking home some good cash. Be prepared to sow. Don't look in the short term. Like if you're in business for just a year, this isn't the time for you to buy an Escalade and go to the most expensive Hawaii trip. And you will do those things eventually, and when you're sowing, you're not just reinvesting the money back into the business. Sow into your reputation. Do the right thing. Even if you're losing money and it's not your fault, and even if it's unfair, but you're going to walk away from a situation and people are going to feel, because emotions matter, feel like you took advantage of them, then just do the right thing and take care of your customer. Take care of your employee, even if sometimes it's not fair. Because when you sow that seed, the time will come when you will harvest, and then you're going to look back and be like, well, this is great. Like a big thing that I share about reputation is I feel like the first 3 years or 4 years of my business, I wasn't really working to make any money. I felt like I was working to build a reputation. I wanted every opportunity, even when there was opportunities to do a job, to make a relationship that wasn't going to make me money. I still wanted that relationship. I still wanted the opportunity to shake their hand. I still wanted the opportunity to prove that I'm a worthwhile guy that can have a conversation. It's cool to be friends with me. I might not share the same values, but I wanted people to meet with them and to kind of build that reputation. And so I would put money last and just reputation first. And when I worked for my reputation, there came a time when your reputation starts to go to work for you. It's really hard to hire employees, find good ones. But when you have a good reputation that you're a good employer, you get people come knocking on your door. It's not uncommon for me to show up to work in the morning and there's somebody standing by my door. And I'm like, can I help you? And they're like, well, I've heard good things about your company. I drive by here every day. I was just wondering if I could see if I could apply for a job. Then your reputation goes to work for you.
Yep.
Same thing with customers. Same thing with banks. You're going to go pull a loan. You make your payments on time. Well, now you're a much qualified, borrower. So think about those things. Sow the seed first, and the harvest will come. It's going to take a lot of hard work. You have to go through the hot summer days, and don't try to harvest before it's ripe. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. Brother, thank you so much for doing this,
You're
man.
welcome.
I had fun.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. If you like this video, here's another one for you to watch. And if you don't want to miss the next video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button.